as you know, Ajuri, Nigeria has had disputed elections many, many times before, but I think this time was different. This time was different because this time Nigerians were promised a technology that would allow for full transparency. This idea of the results being posted almost immediately to an online portal where everybody could view the results in real time was really, really important. It would have also made corrupting the results very, very difficult. And so for this election to have the one piece of technology, the one thing that would have made corrupting the results difficult, all of a sudden, that technology doesn't work. Can you see why many Nigerians are skeptical?
Thank you very much for having me, Zain. Let me start from the fact that your framing of the situation is factually inaccurate. And I want to be very precise about why I say that.
Tell me why. Tell me why. Yes, the technology didn't work.
No, I'm sorry, man. If you don't interject, I'll explain why your framing is inaccurate. Because you've said that only one technology essentially was introduced to essentially uplift or firmly accredit the kind of the legitimacy of the election. That is not true. You're referring to the IREV portal, which is the results electronic verification portal that was brought into place by the Electoral Act that ironically was
I said it would allow for full transparency. I said it would allow for full transparency.
I really do want to answer you, but I can't do that if you're answering your own question. What I'm saying to you, ma'am, is that there's a portal that was supposed to be used where the results will be uploaded in real time. You are right about that. And you are also right about the fact that it did not, the portal was not functioning properly at the point when the collation center was announcing results. That is true. Now, the reason why I said your framing is factually inaccurate is because the main technology that was brought into the electoral process that was not there in all of the disputed elections that you have referred to in the past is actually the BVAS, which is the bimodal voter accreditation system that essentially is a machine that the INEC staff will use to scan your face for your identity and scan your thumbprint to ensure that people are not multiple voting, over voting, and that we don't have false voters or ghost voters and fake results. That was the main technology. Now, what we've been able to put in place, which is the BVAS, right, had an 88% rate of functionality, of workability. That's important to note. In the European Commission report, as well as the report of the ECOWAS, that's the Economic Community of West African States, the Observer Group, they came in and said that, yes, it is absolutely true that the IREV portal, which we would have loved to have worked, was not working, mostly due to scaling up issues that had to do with what we saw, for example, with the Obamacare website. When so many people hit the website at once, you're talking tens of millions of people, and it shuts down. This is what we confronted with the IREV portal. And Nigerians understood that. But that is totally a separate issue from the actual process of voting and the validation and credibility of the votes that were actually cast. And that needs to be known to the international community watching this conversation.
Ajuri, the accreditation of voters, that part of the technology worked, right? That means, that just to explain to our international audience, that means that you can't have fake people voting. That idea, that piece of the technology worked just fine. However, it is important to note the reason why there are so many Nigerians, millions of people across the country right now, you know the mood of the country, who are disheartened, is because the other aspect of the technology, the part that was supposed to allow for full transparency, I'm not talking about the accreditation of voters, that worked, you're right about that. But the part that was supposed to allow for full transparency, the fact that that didn't work let a lot of Nigerians down. Because as you know, there have been disputed elections in the past. In fact, the APC has disputed elections in which the PDP won. So you know what I'm talking about. When you have a system where the transparency is lacking, and INEC had 4 years to prepare for this, and they failed the people essentially. My question to you is, can you understand why there is skepticism here?
First of all, let's appreciate the fact that when we talk about the IREV portal, to say that it did not work at all is not true. What was the issue was that we did not upload all of the results in a time frame.
There were major delays. There were major delays.
Exactly.
And that's the problem.
Absolutely correct. There were major delays. And this has to do with the fact that if you're introducing a new technology, right, you expect that there's going to be a lot of interest in that website, in that portal, to be able to log in and monitor these results in real time, which is what we expected. But you also recognize that governments around the world, in dealing with ICT that caters to tens of millions of people, have had challenges, which is why I referenced the famous incident with the Obamacare website. When there was so much interest, it wasn't because the US government under Barack Obama was corrupt and they didn't want people to access healthcare. It was because the technology could not carry the instantaneous and massive demand that was placed on it in the moment that it was supposed to be used. This is what happened with the IREV portal. Fortunately for us, Nigerians are discerning and intelligent people, and they recognize that the scaling up issue is a real one that happens around the world. It just so unfortunately happened on the day of the election. But people also recognize that the process is not just about the IREV, and we should not deceive our viewers here. When we talk about the IREV, what it does, in effect, is it puts online the results that all of the parties had already mutually agreed to. So, for example, at the polling unit where you have the BVAS, ensuring that you don't have fake voters, which is historic, by the way, we should get credit for that because it did work, even by your own admission. Once that is done, what happens is that agents from all parties, including the Labour Party under Peter Obi, as well as the PDP and the APC, all of them are at the polling unit and they watch the process take place, and all of them have to sign on the dotted line to say, yes, it is true that the ballots read out are reflected on this result sheet. Once that result sheet is collated at the ward center, the local government collation center, and the state center, it's now sent into that IREV portal. This is the issue, Zain, is that many of the people you're talking about, whether it's PDP, Labour Party, or APC, they're not disputing the actual result. They're just disputing the fact that it didn't show up on a screen the way it was supposed to. It's not about the result.
Many people actually are disputing the result. We'll get to that in just a second. But when you think about the other things that there have been concerns about, when you think about the other things that there have been concerns about, we can put the technology aside for 1 second. I mean, when you hear that, you know, as a Nigerian, I'm sure this also disheartens you. When you hear that election workers were threatened, right? That people were told you will die unless you make amendments to this paperwork in terms of what happened at the ballot. I mean, when you hear about that, when you hear about violence, I mean, we ran a piece yesterday showing thugs essentially running into a polling unit and attacking people. You know, there was one woman who had her left eye closed shut because of what happened to her. When you hear about that level of violence, and in addition to the technology not working the way it was supposed to, does that meet your definition of a credible election?
You know, what's most interesting about the question you've asked me? First of all, I'm going to answer your first question, which is absolutely it's disheartening at any point in time in which a process that you have methodically built to prepare the freest and fairest election in Nigeria's history has any kind of encumbrance, has any kind of glitch. Of course, that's something that disheartens me as a Nigerian. But beyond that, we also recognize that human processes are going to have human frailties according to the actual input of the actors involved. You've referred, and this is very interesting, is there's this widespread narrative out there, right? And this tends to happen when on international news programs, we talk about the developing countries, especially African countries, is that when something goes wrong, it's the fault of the ruling party. It's the fault of the incumbent government. That's the knee-jerk reaction. Interestingly, the example you cited with the woman with her eyes shut, that was actually a vote that took place in the southeastern part of the country, where you are from, right? Where that Peter Obi won massively. The Labour Party won over 90% in the southeast, right? Of course, he is from the southeast. So when that happened,
there were instances of violence throughout the country. There were instances of violence throughout the country.
For the ruling party in the southeast instead of the Labour Party. These are real issues. So my point is that it's not a political party issue. This is about the fact that you have individuals in all the political parties looking for undue advantage in certain regions to essentially suit their own interests. And what we have done is to leverage on BVAS and many of the other technologies to ensure that as much as humanly possible, we limit some of the criminal tactics of some politicians in these localities.